It's not my normal live stream music. This is the Metal Gear synthwave remix that LZ did. It's absolutely slaps so hard. Inspired because my sister started playing MGS2 recently, my favourite game. So yeah, I might as well play it. Hopefully he's cool with it. Should be fine. There's a metric ton of tabs open, guys. So many. Where's that one gone? There it is. So many tabs. So much to talk about just for this. My boy fam, my goat fam, my goat is here. Just vibe into this. Nope. Didn't realise I was drinking so loud onto the mic. I just looked at my audio levels. I was like, damn. But yeah, the GOAT is here, fam. The guy who made that banger, who made my theme, is here. Now, I was just inspired because my sister's playing the game, playing the second one. And yeah, no, it was really cool just watching her play it and stuff. Kind of cooked it because I was probably talking too much as she was trying to play the game. But yeah, man, that game is unreal. It's absolutely unreal. I'm gonna live stream a playthrough of that again at some point, no doubt. 100% I will, especially with the remake of 3 coming out, Snake Eater. So I'll tell you what, Elizabeth, you're here at a good time because I'll tell you what, 2/3 of these tabs are just for some stuff I want to discuss with America. And there is a lot to discuss regarding the US elections. Like so much. Like I've kind of tried to. There's so many angles I could attack this with. So I don't know whether it's worth making a load of separate videos or just doing just a really long one. I think I'll just do a really long one, to be honest, just be easier for me. It's rough, bro. Honestly, the one thing I do want to say is some of this. The one caveat is a lot of the incumbent parties that kind of made it through the pandemic in terms of the post-inflation spike of the pandemic didn't survive. Look at the Conservative Party in the UK. Obviously, the Biden-Harris ticket, but there's a lot of others as well. I think Spain were one of the few to make it. That's about it. A lot of them lost support. I think there was the one in Norway I think, and also the party in New Zealand. The Labour Party in New Zealand did quite bad. I think in Australia it went quite badly as well. And these were quite sheltered from COVID, especially those last two countries. But I think I've seen some commentary from AOC here, which she's always an interesting person to listen to. I know there are people who claim she can't, essentially she can't be, the predecessor, not the predecessor, the next kind of Bernie Sanders because she's too ingratiated in the party. But I don't think that's true. I think it could be. I think it could be her. She generally seems to have good takes on certain topics. So let's have a listen to what she's got to say here.
The Democratic Party is not a left party. The Democratic Party is a center or center conservative party.
A centre-right party, I'd say. Or a right-wing party, arguably. By European standards, the DNC would be a right-wing party.
We do not advocate for... We can't even get a floor vote on Medicare for all. Not even a floor vote that gets voted down.
She tried and she failed.
We can't even get a vote on it. So this is not a left party. There are left members inside the Democratic Party that are working to try to make that shift happen. But you're right, it does convey a certain sentiment about true...
Rising food prices and fuel is hurting a lot of those parties. Yeah, I'm going to cover that in a bit. There was Ash Sarkar put out a tweet talking about the rate of inflation, and I think because Americans are a country that are focused mostly on the economy as well in terms of their living standards. I struggle with the opinion I see because she's like a celebrity politician. She voted against the interests of working class after talking a big game. Yeah, I'd have to look more at her voting record. I think in terms of, I think she's probably the smartest, one of the smarter ones out of the party. She might be trying to play the long game to try and get like a senator seat. And then, she might do more. But I think if she looked at Bernie was a consistent outsider within the DNC, but he still did really a lot of good things. And he tried, he pushed the Overton window as best as he could. And I think that's kind of the model she should be following rather than trying to reform the party from inside. Because you have two options, right? And I'll show you kind of two options in the extreme. So you have probably from my favorite anime, right? These two characters. So here you have Suzaku, who tried to reform society from within, trying to ingratiate himself with the monarchy and the royal family in the anime. And you have Lelouch, who tried to influence from the outside through revolution, through violence. And I'm not saying she has to do that, but what I'm saying is that you can't always be on the inside and trying to push things. You have to be an outsider, and you have to be a person who calls stuff out and really be annoying for certain people to deal with. Because we've seen insiders fail as well. That's the thing. Ironically, Joe Biden was the guy who realised he had to push some kind of more left ideals in terms of appealing to working class voters. Kamala Harris, I don't think she really got that. I think she says out loud, but she doesn't always vote the same way she speaks. I get that. That makes a lot of sense. And I think the thing that politicians don't realise is vote records are extremely important. Because when it comes down to it, that's all you have. You can talk as much as you want, but if you don't vote for people's interests, people do pay more attention to that. Exactly. She has to be extremely annoying to them and say, nah, we're not going to do that. Or if you do that, I'm leaking shit. Or not even that. Or just say, I'm not backing it. You're going to lose my support if you do this. Bernie did push Biden, I think, to the left, and that's what helped Biden defeat Trump. Especially, I think Americans really did not like Trump in that moment as well, given a lot of the failures around COVID. But he still had to win that one, and I think that race was tighter in certain areas than people would like to have hoped, in a sense.
Believers, and there are a lot of true believers in that we can capitalism our way out of poverty. In the Democratic Party, if anything, that's probably the majority.
Right.
And that's an area in which I agree with Dr. King.
She has to fight a lot of the moneyed interests. That's going to be the biggest problem. She's learned that sometimes you go along to get along to so important agendas, you may be addressed along the way. But I don't think she's actually achieved a lot, though, Suzanne. That's the problem. I don't think she has a lot to show for it. At least Bernie has pushed certain votes in the Senate about, I think it was re-importing Canadian drugs that would be cheaper, the ones that America exports to Canada, things like that. I don't think, I think she did try and get a voter medical for all, and I think that got just slapped down really hard. But in terms of like feats and achievements, in terms of pushing the Overton window in a direction, it got consistently going on media rounds, consistently annoying people, and essentially putting dirt in people's eyes. That's pretty much what it comes down to. That's what Bernie did the best, I think. He did try and do that to certain politicians. Essentially the Tobey Maguire, I'm going to put some dirt in your eye. But I think AOC is too willing to play ball, and I hope that changes as kind of her career goes on. I think she's relatively young as far as politicians go. But Bernie was always a firebrand, to be fair. You got this geezer, Ian Dunt, saying, is it really too much to ask Corbyn supporters to have a little introspection? Labour was not just defeated, it tottered, is that a word? On the verge of annihilation. And you got this guy talking about voters, American voters, saying voters were wrong to support Trump. People will tell you this isn't a helpful thing to say, but our role right now isn't to be helpful, it's to be truthful. So, maybe the Biden-Harris ticket should have some introspection, especially Harris. Yeah, she's still quite young, I think. I think the thing she's got to think about is the party machine will always push against progressive ideals, and you have to be happy being a villain. You have to be happy with someone saying, "Nah, you're pie in the sky." That's what Hillary Clinton kept doing to Bernie Sanders. She was like, he talks about Norway having single payer. Where's Norway? It's like we know where Norway is in Europe. Like Norway's not some mythical country. Like it's not like Thor and Odin just rolling around. Norway's a real country that has really good healthcare, and it's a really happy country. Even the UK has, I think you would class it as single-payer healthcare. Is the UK some mythical country where Robin Hood robs the rich and gives to the poor? No, it's just I think America is the only developed country that doesn't really have single-payer healthcare. Just discussing kind of the UK under this. This will be a big jumble of just stuff because you have the Labour Party who try to give advice to Kamala Harris. This is the Labour Party, by the way, who managed to only get about 36% of the vote in the UK, despite their big majority. They don't realise how unpopular they are, and how tactically naive they are as well. They were against one of the worst candidates in Rishi Sunak to do it, and this is Deborah Mattison, who was, I think she might be, or she was one of Starmer's top aides. I don't know if she still is.
I was out there working with a think tank called Progressive Policy Institute rather than working directly for the team. We did speak to some of their strategists and gave them advice. I'm not sure they listened.
So what advice were you giving the team that you feel, looking at the result, wasn't heeded? What were you saying they could do to overturn this narrative that it was a changed election?
I was trying to sort of translate across some of the learnings from our successful campaign here in the UK.
And, they weren't that successful, guys. They might have the big majority, but they really weren't.
What we did was to identify who were the voters that we really had to win in order to win. We called them hero voters. Actually, there was striking similarity with the voters that the Democrats needed to win. They were working class. They were less likely to be college graduates. Here in the UK, they were more likely to have voted Brexit, for example. And there were people who had been traditionally Labour voters who had moved away from Labour in 2019, when the red wall went crashing down. It was those voters. We identified them, we got to know them, we really respected them, and we put them at the heart of our policy development and our campaigning. And I think it worked. And I suggested that they did a similar thing, that they identified.
The issue here is they gave their votes to the Tory party in the hopes that the Tories would, help them with their living standards, which didn't happen ultimately. And then they swung back to Labour. Like, I don't think you did a lot to really get them to come back effectively. That's the problem. And here you have a really different situation that would have worked back in the last election, when you would have had first-time Democratic voters voting for Donald Trump and then potentially swinging back towards the Democrats. But you have the opposite, where you have the Democrats who are the incumbents, and you have people who are backing Trump now because they think he might be able to fix things like living standards, which is something that voters actually did talk about. This strategy doesn't really make sense here.
It was curiously very similar group of people, and that they really focused.
She doesn't realise those people would leave the Democrats because they think the party's failed them. That's the issue. It doesn't, when you're the incumbent, you can't kind of follow this strategy. It doesn't make sense when you failed voters already. And this is, I'll tell you what, yeah, Elizabeth, you're not going to be familiar with this guy yet, but I fucking hate this guy. This is Jonathan Ashworth. So he's a guy who lost his seat, right, to an independent candidate because he's washed. And then he keeps going on the media runs. Every other channel they'll have him, all the time. And so he lost his seat, right? And he went to Chicago to advise the US party. So they got a guy who's a certified loser. Let's be honest, he's a loser. To go to the US to advise the Harris campaign, and they're like, "Oh my God, how did we lose?" It's crazy behavior. You've got here David Sirota talking about, does anyone see the electoral danger of the Democratic Party spending a decade and literally billions of dollars on TV ads telling the country that Bush Cheney are horrible, but then the same Democratic Party turning around and touting the endorsement of the Cheneys? And this is one of the things where Democratic insiders begged the Harris team not to campaign with Liz Cheney, but they did, because they tried to push towards these voters who are kind of soft Republicans, I guess. And it just doesn't work. That strategy doesn't work, especially when I don't think Liz Cheney's that popular anyways. And there's something AOC kind of talked about. She talks about another thing in terms of, they wanted to get rid of Biden and Kamala Harris, but they couldn't manage it.
What a lot of these folks aren't saying, I'm just going to say it. If you think that there is consensus among the people who want Joe Biden to leave, that they will support Kamala, Vice President Harris, you would be mistaken. And I'm going to say that because if they're going to come out and say all their little things on background off the record, but they're not going to be fully honest, I'm going to be honest for them. I'm in these rooms. I see what they say in conversations. A lot of them are not just interested in removing the president. They are interested in removing the whole ticket.
And that's something we see in this tweet here. So you have Nancy Pelosi to the New York Times saying, had President Biden got out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. And the thing is, they ran out of time. As I say, Kamala may have, and I think she would have done well in that and been stronger going forward. I disagree with that. I think she would have done awful. This is a person who lost her own state to Bernie Sanders during the primaries before. She's a uniquely bad candidate. I'll say that. She's pretty bad. She goes on to say, if that didn't happen, we live with what happened, and because the president endorsed Kamala Harris immediately, that really made it almost impossible to have a primary at that time. If it had been much earlier, it would have been different, and the thing is, he should never have ran again. And, the other irony is that Kamala Harris was, essentially she would have probably spent a lot of time with Biden. She would have seen the mental decline, and he did decline a lot. That debate people saw, the debate with Trump, people kind of saw how bad it was. They're like, oh my God, we can't vote for this guy. And that's one of the things that I think sunk the Democrats. Really, they were never going to recover from that. Here you got, Medicine and Ryan Grimm. I'm not familiar with the person in the middle discussing the inflation problem, which something, Joe Elazid, if you're still here, you might be worth mentioning. How bad is the inflation kind of in the state you're in?
I think on the economy, his big mistake was, you remember when inflation started going up, we started to get some corporate earnings calls where they were saying this is an opportunity for us to raise prices and keep them high.
This is a similar problem we faced in the UK as well.
They were saying it publicly.
You should have gone on the offensive.
And I was saying it constantly. Other people started saying it. And then the White House economists sent out a message publicly that said, we don't have the data for this. Stop. Didn't stop me from saying it, but I can't talk to the whole country. Yeah. If he had hit that, and that's the kind of left-wing populism. So his legacy is getting crushed by a pretty good economy because he couldn't actually go after the real
But doesn't that go
villain.
to the point of what you said? And let's wrap up with a really good point you made earlier about tacking to the top versus tacking to the left or right. It's not about left or right or even being a socialist or Bernie. It's about Democrats being able to identify villains, enemies, opponents in the way that Republicans do, from trans kids to, Iran.
What they should have done is attack the big companies and said, like, you guys are raising prices artificially. We're going to come after you guys. You guys are the ones screwing over the American people. Because that's what they did. It's not great here. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad over here as well, to be honest.
To liberal elites on the coasts, they're very good at finding enemies. Democrats prefer to campaign with their enemies.
To be fair, that's facts as well, So it's really interesting bit here from those two. And, this from Ash Sarkar, the tweet we were talking about earlier. She goes, in the last 4 years, American food prices have gone up by 22%. Like, I'm sorry, but running a campaign on the threat to democracy when people are unable to afford groceries, staple groceries, was completely bonkers. Which, again, is true. Like, you can talk about a threat to democracy, but ultimately, for people, they will vote based on living standards. That's one of the major problems. I was going to discuss this video from Jimmy the Giant, but we'll discuss that in a little bit. We got this talking about the UK. You got the genius of LBC.
If anyone's getting overexcited about the fact that Labour won a landslide majority on the back of about 34% of the vote in this country, when you have, quite rightly, the Conservatives being trounced because they were a shower and they needed to go. But if you're lulling yourself into a false sense of security that this is the rise of some great absolute support for some left-wing view of the world.
I mean, no, the Labour Party there's no real left-wing policies that they push. So, again, stop the cap, bro.
Think again, my friends. Think again. Because you've got 4 million voters who voted for reform, and for the first time ever, they've got 5 people in Parliament. So when I ask you the question, could Britain's Trump moment be coming? I would say no. It's already come. Twice.
The phrasing here, abysmal, but he's not wrong.
Brexit, 2016, you didn't listen then. Boris Johnson in 2019, you didn't listen then, although Boris Johnson stood on a lot of things and then totally screwed them up by not reducing immigration, but the direction of travel from the voters was clear. So you've had 2 indications so far in this country that people want immigration to come down, that they're sick and tired of identity politics. They want things like gender.
The irony of him talking about identity politics when he was the one pushing this angle that Labour are washed because the Tories have had Asian chancellors and whatever is crazy.
Puberty blockers to be very, very carefully looked at when it comes to kids. They don't feel that it's fair for trans people, and by the way, I have a lot of respect for trans people on an individual basis, but a lot of people feel that this should not become a political mantra when it comes to women-only spaces and prisons.
Do you know who's made it a political issue? People like you and J.K. Rowling, mate.
And other things. These are serious issues.
But he's right there. The UK's Trump moment has happened, and I think if we don't look at what happened in America when it comes to cost of living, it's going to continue on. And it's not going to get better under Trump, the inflation crisis, because he's talking about putting tariffs on on European goods. And the thing is, right, when it comes to tariffs, it's a tax on imports that will push further prices up, especially when you've got issues around scarcity as is. So, he's an idiot for doing this. A lot of people just don't understand how international trade and tariffs work. It's not their fault because they don't teach you about that stuff. Damn it, I hate this link system they made so much.
Put tariffs of 10 to 20% on imported goods, including from this country. How would you respond to that if you were Chancellor?
So the first and most important thing is America is a hugely important ally, and we need to make sure that we have a very firm and good relationship with the Trump administration. Now, of course, this government has not got off onto the best start in that respect in terms of some of the comments that have been made by members of the government front bench. But it is primarily about relationships. But you're absolutely right, 10 to 20% tariffs. We have over £300 billion worth of exports to the United States, our most important trading partner. So it's important that we get that relationship right.
Yeah,
what would you do?
What would you do? Because what Kemi Badenoch said to the Prime Minister yesterday is, and I quote, she said, discuss, chat. The Prime Minister has no plans whatsoever for building on the special relationship. So in practical terms, what specifically would you do, were you Chancellor, to respond to those tariffs? If introduced?
Well, I think I've already made an important point, which is when we talk about chat, some of the chat, of course, has been making some very derogatory remarks
That's
about
the Labour
the
Party, Mr. Stroud. Yes, I'm going to talk to them about that.
So, yeah, this guy's deflecting because, again, you want to talk about the specifics of it.
We need a change in tone and approach to Donald Trump, and hopefully this government can now.
Yeah, Keir Starmer and David Lammy have had dinner with him, and it was all very convivial. So how would you respond to tariffs of 10 to 20%?
Because this is subject to negotiations and discussions, and the most important thing is that we forge a strong, positive relationship with the Trump.
The irony is, for fuck's sake. I'm getting real pissed off at this. The irony is he put tariffs on UK goods under the Tories as well. It wasn't down to language. It was down to him trying to basically trying to either force American taxpayers to pay more for imported goods, or the fact that he didn't understand international trade, or he really wanted to ramp up domestic manufacturing, but he didn't want to do that because he didn't really offer much in terms of subsidies.
Administration going forward, and that is exactly what Kemi was referring to yesterday in Prime Minister's questions.
Yeah, but what would you do about the tariffs?
We need you have to have discussions. At the end of the day, as a sovereign nation, the United States will take decisions on those kind of matters, but they will clearly make them in conjunction with discussions with other countries, including those within the European.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call a non-answer. That is an absolute joke. This is the shadow chancellor. No idea what he's talking about. You're talking about, trade experts calculating £22 billion, or a 2.6% hit to UK exports to the US, 0.8% to GDP if Trump goes through with the 20% blanket tariff. Petroleum fishing, which has been cracked, absolutely cracked because of Brexit. Petroleum, mining sectors could all see exports down a fifth, according to Centre for ITP. And so what that means is it's going to impact jobs in the UK. It's going to impact the economy quite a lot. So all of these Labour guys who are trying to impress Trump or whatever, like, what you've got to do in this situation is look to Europe and look to get dynamic alignment in order to help ease exports to the EU. That's the first thing that they should be looking at doing, rather than trying to placate the US. I saw this this map as well. Biden's internal polling was showing something close to this map, and they allowed him to run for re-election. I mean, this is crazy. This is, maybe it was a miracle that Kamala Harris managed to recover some of this, because when you look at this map, it's madness. Like, it's crazy. Like, he would have won by 408 to 130. It was a complete wipeout. Isn't New York like a solid blue state as well? This is insanity right here. Like, I don't think they realised how unpopular Biden was. I guess that's one of the reasons why Pelosi kind of tried to get him out, but it was too late. It was too late by the time they reacted. I mean, this is wild behaviour. Now this from the news agents discussing kind of younger voters, and I think that's where actually, where's that Jimmy the Giant clip would make more sense here. I'm not really going to react to it too much. In terms of, like, the stuff he's saying, it makes a lot of sense in terms of the left having an image problem. In terms of when you look at dudes, when you're a young guy, young in terms of, like, between say 16 and say 22, when you're still kind of developing and trying to figure out who you are. If you look at the people on the left, I think the left does have an image problem, especially when it comes to dudes. I'm no exception to that. I'm overweight, and the only thing I've got is a beard, like a decent beard. That's about it, and a good haircut if I get one. But I think the left does have an image problem. And I think this generation here, the ones that are coming up, they're the ones who are going to kind of experience that. There was one more tweet, actually. There is. Okay, that's fine. This was the one I wanted. So, in terms of discussing the problem with younger voters, this would be quite interesting, especially when one of the issues is that, Kamala Harris should have done the podcast circuit. That's what Donald Trump did, and exposed him to a lot of new voters. We discussed like how much of an influence Rogan has, but he went on, I think, Lex Friedman's podcast as well, and some really big networks that people who would have seen Trump in the news and heard good things or bad things or whatever, but they would never have heard him in an actual conversation, like discussing his ideas and whatever. And this is one of the things that helped him. Kamala Harris really fumbled by not doing these podcasts, I think.
What happened with the Gen Z influx that was supposed to make a huge difference of 3 or 4 million? Where did that go? It's a really, really good question mark. And I have to say, the first bit of news, sort of, under the radar news that we should have understood and missed was when the exit polls for Georgia came out. They said that there had been an increase in independent voters for Trump. And I think we kind of didn't understand what that was telling us, because many people thought that independent voters basically means, first-time voters. A lot of the time, people who are not affiliated with one party or another. And we thought, the narrative was that the new voters would be predominantly going for Harris if they were women. And they predominantly did, to be fair. But when we saw that increase in independent voters in places like Georgia, which Trump then won quite authoritatively, we should have realised that actually Gen Z wasn't monolithic.
I think that any political campaign chief who says we're going to rely on the youth vote to get us over the line is going to get laughed at. Because historically, and you think of so many elections where that has been said, young people are going to really turn out to vote this time, and they are going to make the difference, and that is what you need to watch out for. And we did that to some extent.
They did in the Scottish referendum.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about the 400,000 people who registered to vote after Taylor Swift, came out and said, back this. It then,
But look, I mean, part of the answer, and this is the thing that Democrats will find most chilling, is that, well, there were lots of Gen Z who voted.
Yeah.
And lots of them voted for Trump.
Yeah.
So we can see from the exit polls that, for example...
Yeah, it's a lot of people who aren't like that, Alice, to be honest, who wouldn't vote until they're, like, I think, significantly older.
If we look at young women, in 2020, 33% voted
What is going on with Goodall's fit here? He's dressing crazy.
Trump. In 2024, 40% did.
Yeah.
If we look at young men, in 2020, 41% voted for Trump. In 2024, 56% did.
I mean,
so,
that was the Joe Rogan strategy,
Yeah.
essentially. Get people out because they're hearing you and they like you, and if they haven't voted for the first time but you're talking straight to them, I mean, there was method in that.
So Trump actively targeted young men in particular, which
He
clearly...
built a new coalition, despite the fact that his older coalition kind of died off, I think, because of COVID. A lot of them were anti-vax and stuff. He managed to build a new coalition. It's incredible stuff, politically speaking. I voted for Obama's first term. Most people my age I know personally voted for the first time 4 years ago, so we were turning all 30 or so. That makes sense. I think I voted first time around when I was 18. And then it would have been 2015, I think. And then I voted in the Brexit referendum, and I voted each time since. But I'm a politics nerd, so it makes sense.
Clearly has paid off, at least to some extent. And the revulsion that was expected from young women did not materialise. And I wonder, and again, this is speculation, but I wonder whether there is an argument around that, which is that particularly for the younger part of that cohort, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they've grown up with this guy. They know this guy. To them, he's actually the norm of what a president could be like. And it was quite...
He would have been president whilst they were quite young, like in terms of, if they're talking about 18, 19, probably like between 10 to 14, potentially. I'm bad at maths, but when they were quite young, they would have seen him.
Interesting that actually Harris's support was actually stickiest among voters over 65, who perhaps have a much greater conception of what a traditional, normal president would be like. And I think the chilling thing for the future of democracy, frankly, is that a lot of young people are growing up in this country looking at Trump and thinking this is what a normal president is, and that's how they behave.
Kind of nuts in it, but Trump went out and tried to push for votes. I don't think Kamala did that much, and this is why the millennial generation is the GOAT generation. Look at this. We were the ones that didn't have the conservative switch. So millennial voters in the UK and US are not following the typical pattern of growing more conservative as they age. So you can see, age, look at that, becoming more left rather than more to the right, and that's why. Whoops, got the wrong clip queued up.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
He's talking about the millennial generation, because that is what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about!
That's we didn't have the conservative turn like every other age group seems to have. Like, you got Gen X there, you've got Boomers, you got the silent generation, but the millennials are the only exception to this so far. And I wonder where Gen Z will be on the spectrum. But I think more interestingly, I'm more interested in where Gen Alpha will be on this spectrum as well. I imagine they're going to be quite conservative. I think they're going to be further up here, more than people think. I was 18 in 1984 in a forced labour camp in Manchester with the College Physics Prize. Okay. He makes a really good point there. A lot of young voters have no idea what it was like before. That's true. I mean, if you look at George W. Bush, I mean, he wasn't the most articulate guy in the world. Let me see if I can find the clip. It's the one that J. Cole sampled. Let's see if I can find it. George Bush. This one. He's not the most articulate guy in the world. This one here.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Fool me, you can't fool me again. I love it, yeah. But that's what I'm saying, and when it comes to the American people as well, he fooled you once. Shame on you guys. He fooled you again. Now, surprisingly, this tweet is actually over here for some reason. Don't know why. But I think Jimmy the Giant, he does a really interesting video on this. So what I'll do is I'll share this here. He's talking about the left and having an image problem. I think he's right in terms of the way people look, and it's not a dig at people. Like I said, I'm not the best looking dude out there, but I think there is an image problem in terms of like the way kind of certain things are pushed, like diversity and things like that. Like I think it's to be more of a focus on the economy rather than anything. Focus on the economy first, and then move away from that to the other stuff like diversity, inclusion, and stuff. Because having a strong economy does help minority groups as well. And this from Stephanie Kelton, actual economist, saying Democrats abandon FDR's vision for universal economic security in favour of targeted, temporary and timely programmes that require the already insecure to run bureaucratic gauntlet to receive a modicum of support, which is true. And that's something that's happened under Labour as well. It's happening now, I guess, with the pension credit. That's one thing they should bear in mind. And when you look at his second Bill of Rights here, every American has the right to a job, an adequate wage and decent living, a decent home, medical care, which is something Americans don't have access to. The fourth one, definitely. Economic protection during sickness, accident, old age or unemployment, which again, that's something Americans don't have. A good education. I mean, I don't want to be mean, Al-Azid, but that one, I think number 6, I don't think you guys have that as well. Not as spread out as it really should be. In the UK, I would argue we don't even have that. In the UK, I would argue protection during sickness. Sick pay in this country is a joke. Our pension system's a joke, so there's that. Medical care, the NHS is in a very bad state, but it's there at least, and hopefully it'll improve. In the UK, I don't think we have access to an adequate wage and decent living. Not really. So even the UK is lacking in these areas. Don't worry about sparing my feelings, man. I'm under no illusions, though I appreciate the consideration. Cool, it's time to cook, fam. You said it. You goddamn Americans! No, wait, let me see if I can find... I'm so annoyed. I'm not prepared. I'm not equipped to deal with kind of cooking you guys on stream. Honestly, there was a... Oh, man. There's a clip from Ghost... Oh man, sorry, I'm derailing the stream here. There it is. Play, you stupid clip. Oh, I'm so annoyed.
Bloody Yanks. I thought they were the good guys.
Bloody Yanks. I thought they were the good guys. So even Ghost, not a fan of you guys. But I think this is actually, especially, this is very old. Going on with the Sunday roast. It's gonna go up tomorrow. It's gonna go up tomorrow, QA. There was no issue with it, I don't think. Did a special on America. It's me, and 2 other dudes that were on there. Well, it'd be 3 other dudes really. That were on there. So yeah, bloody Yanks. I thought they were the good guys. And this kind of switching gears a bit, the European angle. I'll put this at the end, actually. That would make way more sense. Let's see. Where is the end? There's a bit of Germany as well. Yeah, we'll save the European stuff to the end of this. There's a bit of Macron there for you. For the Frenchies. The only French viewer I know is not here, so that's that. And talking about Biden's legacy. Who dares disturb me on Discord? It's just a general ping. Okay, it's fine. How dare they have games night while I'm streaming? Crazy. I meant to imply who on the show, what are you talking about? Mostly talking about America. There's a guy called Scott, and then the other dude, I've forgotten his name, but he's cool. He's cool. And I don't say that just because he was on, but I liked him. He was good. I'm crap with names though, so just bear that in mind. He's cool though, I like him. He's got the same headphones as me, so he's a baller. I do not think Trump is going to do tariffs. He did that before against China. He'll do it. He's an idiot. The man's an idiot. He'll do it again. This is all he knows. He'll go back to the same playbook, America first. The man's an idiot. This is what I mean. Like he will do it again just to prove like he's America first. He'll definitely do tariffs on China. I'm telling you that. I guarantee there'll be tariffs on China. Tariffs on Europe is something he did as well with like steel tariffs. They were the first things I think Biden got rid of when he came into office. He kept them on the UK for a bit longer, steel tariffs, but he did get rid of them in the end. He's gonna do it again. He's dumb. That's the thing. The man has no idea what a tariff. I'm convinced. I'm Elazid, yeah. You're 100. Wallah, you're 100% correct. The man does not know how tariffs work. Yeah, I'm telling you now. The man's an idiot. Discussing Biden.
President Biden will be remembered as the president whose disastrous mishandling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan resulted in the tragic deaths of 13 American soldiers. I think he'll be remembered as the president whose gross mishandling of the U.S. economy resulted in inflation ravaging the pocketbooks of ordinary Americans. And I think he'll be remembered as the U.S. president whose disastrous foreign policy resulted in tragic war in the Middle East, war in Russia and Ukraine, and China threatening Taiwan. So
I think he'll be remembered as Genocide Joe. I genuinely think that's how he'll be remembered. Like LBJ was remembered as, he didn't get a good rap either, even though apparently he was a good president domestically. The only thing I remember about LBJ, learning about him, because we did the Vietnam War, was LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? That's it. China retaliated against US tariffs by cutting buying from the US farmers, hurt Trump. He doesn't need to get... Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree with that. This is talking about, I think minority votes. And I don't want to assume, because you never know.
Hey, my family's probably going to get mad at me for sharing this, but I truly don't care at this point. So in 2017, 2018, I can't remember exactly the year, but my brother was deported. He was an illegal immigrant for many years.
Sorry if this video is a bit quiet.
But he was deported. On the day that he was taken by ICE, he was going to work with my brother. They worked together, I think. I can't remember exactly, but they were going to work together. And he had his kids in his car. So my nieces and nephews watched their dad get arrested and taken away by ICE. I'm not going to say that my brother was perfect, because he wasn't. Like, none of us are. But he's not a bad person. So, back to him getting deported. So, this was... I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018, but...
It's too fast for 1.25, too slow for normal speed.
...was in office, right? So, he gets deported. Some of my nieces and nephews have not seen their dad since he got deported. 2 of them are now able to vote. The 2 that voted literally voted for Trump.
Can you imagine how stupid you have to be to do that? Imagine how dumb, right? The guy who pushed ICE, essentially pushed a campaign to get illegal migrants deported from America. Your own parent, right? You vote for that fucking idiot. Like, you meant like smoking the logic pack, fam. Absolutely just shocking behaviour. I was waiting for the punchline and it was there.
They voted for Trump. And I'm like so mind blown that even happened, because they saw their dad get deported. They were traumatized from it. And for some reason, they find it okay for other people to go through that.
Just it's a crazy behaviour, man. Like, they saw their dad get deported. They still voted for this geezer. And we're looking at the Latino vote going up in favour of Trump, and this guy explains it here.
That was a bit of a surprise for basically every observer who had...
Literally the guy who said, the Mexicans, they're criminals, they're rapists, I assume some are good people, right? And that's not a full attack on the Latino community, but he's attacking Mexicans specifically, and I guarantee you he probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a lot of the Latin American community.
Seen Democrats make gains among this demographic following the reversal of Roe v. Wade, and following the heavy messaging that
Yeah, kids in cages for months, children in cages, deportations is bad enough on its own, but the treatment, it's crazy. It was madness. But, yeah.
They put in on abortion and on women's rights in general. So it was a little bit of a surprise. And what's even more notable is that the gap was bigger among women of color and men of color than it was among white men and white women. And that was quite surprising too.
What do you mean, sorry? Just explain that.
Well, the gender gap between white men and white women was considerably narrower than the gender gap between women of color and men of color.
Joyce, they don't think it'll ever happen to them. That's what it is.
Right.
And that was notable into how stark the divergence was.
And talking of that, 45% of Hispanic Latino voters went for Trump. I mean, he's pushing those numbers up. How come?
I think this comes down to a couple of things. A lot of the times in the last few years, really in the last decade, Democrats misdiagnosed what the Latino community and what the Hispanic community actually wanted. They said that they wanted progressivism and immigration liberalism. And in truth, it seems that pocketbook issues and checkbook issues just motivate.
I don't think they care about immigration that much. I don't want to monolith people, but I think it is mostly about pocketbook issues, like he says.
Them a little bit more during times of high inflation. And there's nothing to condemn the community on for that. And I think Democrats really focused on the wrong things with that group and have been focusing on the wrong things with them since 2016 when Hillary Clinton hit her high watermarks.
Yeah, that again, I think it does go back to the economy stupid. You know, the irony of, I think that, you know, the Democratic Party being, I think, the people who kind of coined that phrase, and then, you know, really failing to understand that is madness. Is democracy dead? I mean, has democracy ever lived? Has democracy ever lived? That's the question. And this guy here, yeah, I hope this brother here gets food poisoning, because this guy's a fucking idiot as well.
Por Biden. Yeah, Trump. ¿Por qué? No muchos inmigrantes, como nosotros también somos inmigrantes, pero no mucho. No más. No más. Llegaste, pero no.
So he's saying, essentially, he voted for Trump because he doesn't want any more immigrants, right? And he says, like, we are immigrants, but no more. These people, right, he deserves food poisoning. Do you know why? Because these people who pull up the drawbridge behind him, the worst kind of people. Absolute scum of the earth. This guy right here. I don't have the soundboard equipment to do this. But this guy, yeah, if I was his dad, trust me, I'd disown this kid, fam.
Stings, doesn't it?
You've raised an awful human being. You've raised an absolute abomination. You know, you have here, Trump will begin to deport millions of undocumented immigrants when he starts his term. Campaign Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Wednesday morning he'll launch the largest deportation operation of undocumented immigrants day one. And you got this guy here saying, I have a friend, his mother is an undocumented immigrant. He admitted today that he voted for Trump due to concerns about inflation. I just don't even know what to say anymore. He's college educated, so that's meant to be good. He's got a fucking degree. He's still a fucking moron. He goes, I just don't even know what to say anymore. Oh, sorry, but he still thinks Trump wasn't talking about his mum. Like, I guarantee you, yeah, if ICE get called on that guy's mum, yeah, what's his reaction going to be? Genuine question. Because this, I mean, the mentality of, you know, he's gonna help my life. He's gonna make my life better. Fuck all the rest of them. These are some of the scummiest people in society. This result of material conditions, calling these people stupid or awful, polarize them. Do you know what? If I'm talking about specific people here. If you're a person who's emigrated to a country and you're saying, I want less immigrants, right? You're a scumbag. You're a fucking scumbag. There's no two ways about it. If you're a person who benefited from certain policies like right to buy for council houses, right, and then you're against that policy, you're a fucking scumbag. Yeah. If you're this person here, you know, whose your own mother is undocumented, right, and you vote for the guy who he will deport, you know, potentially could deport your own mum, you're a scumbag. If you're this person's family members here, who your own father got deported, right, she's talking about how traumatized they were, and you still voted for Trump, you're a scumbag. You are. You know, the ones that voted just on inflation, right? Okay, whatever. You know, okay, fine. Yeah. You know, the ones that, you know, voted for Democrat last time and they didn't resolve things, whatever. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. But the people who pull up the ladder behind them, yeah, or the people who vote to make people's lives worse, fuck those people. And I'm dead serious about that. I detest those people. If you're not one of the people who are like, oh, my life's good, yeah, I hate other people, I just want my life to be better, they're the worst people in society, because they'll make society a worse place. So they 100% deserve to get called out, and I'll keep doing that. Do not care. Yeah, we understand these people voted against their self. They didn't vote against their self-interest. No. This guy here on the screen, he might be illegal. He's not going to face deportation, but his mother will. He's going to have to face the trauma of potentially his mum being deported, but he directly is not hit by this. He's directly not hit by this. It won't impact his life directly, apart from he won't be able to see his mum. But he's a scumbag because he's allowing other other families to go through this trauma. You cannot understand what's driving. I told you it's inflation. I don't know, Martin. I don't know how long you've been in the stream. I told you it's inflation. We've gone through this. We've gone through this. You must have missed the first half, pal. It is sad times for you. We've talked about tariffs. We've talked about inflation. We've talked about all of this different stuff. We've talked about the lack of, the Democratic Party not being on the left. We talked about we literally covered this from Ryan Grimm. Predominantly, it's people's living standards that have been hit. Did you not listen to this brother here? Where's he gone? The guy with the drip on Newsnight saying pocketbook issues. Did you miss that bit? Did you miss me covering that bit specifically here when I talked about how, pocketbook issues were the important thing for these people, for the Latino community? Did you miss that? Did you miss the bit on Greekflation as well? Ryan Grimm here talking about Greekflation and how I said it was important Biden should have dealt with this. He didn't. It's crazy behaviour. Moving on, we're going to talk about Austerity Boy. Outlined how he got his prediction so wrong.
I was completely wrong, but I would rather be wrong, I guess, optimistically, believing in people than be right pessimistically. I mean, I feel I've often been right pessimistically. I was right by thinking Iraq and Afghanistan were going to be catastrophic messes, and that didn't make me feel very good about the world.
Wait, what?
Than be right pessimistically. I mean, I feel I've often been right pessimistically. I was right by thinking Iraq and Afghanistan were going to be catastrophic messes, and that didn't make
pocketbook issues like your cost of living, that kind of stuff. That's what he's talking about. I think it's more of an American kind of term, but it's we would define it as like cost of living, something like that. Things that hit your living conditions.
Make me feel very good about the world.
One hears, Rory, and one sees at least on social media, a lot of sort of shock and disgust this morning, almost people saying, how could Americans do this to the world? Do you have a bit of that in you?
Well, obviously, I'm guilty of massive wishful thinking.
Price of gas, yeah. Just the cost of existing, I guess. Maybe that's the best way to define it. Like, food. I think gas prices do hit Americans more than most other countries, just because like America has very limited public transport. Things like that.
And I suppose wishful thinking is about my believing that America wouldn't do this. I became very invested in a story that maybe populism was not in an inexorable rise, and that maybe what had happened in Poland this year and what happened in India and to a lesser extent Turkey, maybe even Marine Le Pen's not doing as well as she might have done in the French election, maybe suggested a tide was turning, and I became too hopeful.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, though, and like when things go well or things go badly in one or two specific countries, it's not really the biggest indicator of the direction the world is going in. I mean, when you had FDR in America, you still had Adolf Hitler in Germany, for example. FDR was taking America in a more positive direction, whereas Adolf was taking Germany in a very negative, extremely negative direction. So it's not necessarily an indicator, when countries are going one way versus the other. When you're hungry, you can't see past the empty plate. It's easy to get fooled by the one who promises to feed you. Hard to care about complex issues and marginalised groups when you're hungry. That is true. That is true. I missed the beginning of your show. That's unlucky. Unfortunate. Most unfortunate. But, as I get you. I don't think a lot of these people are starving, though, but I think they just wanted... I think inflation probably bit them pretty hard. I think I started on like an hour ago. Nah, about 45 minutes ago. This is the very mindset incentivized lawmakers to, it keeps people down so they don't focus on bigger issues. I don't know how bad like poverty has hit these people. The Democrats should have made sure basic stuff. Yeah, I think like basic fundamentals are a big problem in politics. I think that's the thing politicians keep forgetting. Like inflation is a huge problem, I think, for people because you feel it. You feel it directly. I think the two things you feel most, right, are probably taxes and inflation. I think you feel taxes. You feel inflation more because it hits you pretty much every day or at least a couple times a week. Whereas you only look at your pay packet like once a year, not once a year, once a month even. The Dems will never learn. Forget them. Build something new. Yeah, the problem is though that your American system, you can't, until you get rid of the electoral college, you can't make a third party. So there's no viable third party. So the best thing you can do is try and infiltrate the Democratic Party and force it to the left. Get into the primaries, get into the selection processes, and just try and pick people as best you can, regardless of if they win or not. Just force it to the left. That's what you got to do.
But, am I disgusted? I don't know. I mean, I think it's awful. I mean, this is the world's largest, oldest, greatest democracy, and it's just...
The greatest democracy ain't no ways. No, it's not. I mean, it's not the oldest. I mean, I think Greece would have a say in that one, but it's very flawed democratically.
Just voted for a man who is committed to mass deportations, to stripping away people's right for abortion, who is a multiple convicted felon, who's about to set up horrendous economic policies, and who's about to betray Ukraine to Russia. So, yeah,
it's always like that when you lose, especially in the manner that they lost. It's always going to be a circular firing squad for now. We saw that under when the Labour Party lost a couple of times, really, where people start turning on each other. The one thing they got to do is really understand why they lost, and then go from there. And the reason why they lost is mostly, I think, the cost of living stuff.
I'm pretty cross.
Rory, a lot of people, I'm sure, on particular sides of the political spectrum, took a great deal of solace from your prediction when you made it. Do you regret making it?
No, I don't suppose so.
It's his job, isn't it? Like his job is to discuss politics. Like you can make a prediction and be right, and make a prediction and be wrong, but you don't put your hopes in in people's predictions. You go out there and you vote.
I mean, I was completely wrong, but I would rather be wrong, I guess, optimistically, believing in people, than be right pessimistically. I mean, I feel I've often been right pessimistically. I was right by thinking Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, they kind of, I hate when they do this kind of clip stuff and they put it at the front. But I kind of, as much as I don't like the geezer, I do agree with him, because being pessimistically correct, there's no win there. There's no win. You don't feel good about it. I'd rather be wrong. I'd rather be wrong. The fact that on Sunday roast I predicted Trump would win, I'd rather be wrong. But that's not the way the world goes. People wouldn't be smart if they based their hopes on what Rory... That's crazy. That's a wild statement. How dare you insult austerity, boy? That's my job. The sad thing is, I knew she wasn't going to win. I mean, yeah. I saw this from Jon Stewart, and I'll probably get copyright claimed because that's what happened last time I used one of his clips. But he says we're all gonna have to wake up tomorrow morning and work like hell to move the world to the place that we prefer it to be. And I agree with him. And I think, oops, oh no, that's definitely gonna get me copyrighted. And I think one of the things we need to remember is this clip here.
We don't just sit back and hope for the best. We'll make the best happen.
I hope you guys can hear that one. Did you guys hear it?
We don't just sit back and hope for the best. We'll make the best happen.
And I think that is probably the most important thing of, we don't just sit back and hope for the best. And I think that's kind of one I've kind of internalized a lot, which is, you can't really just sit back and hope in it. You have to try. You have to try. And my worldview has changed a lot, I think, over the last year. It's mostly down to two specific people who, I hate I did hate optimism. I still kind of hate it a bit because I'm incredibly pessimistic. But that's the way my brain functions. But I think my worldview has changed a lot because of those two. They're not in the stream, luckily. They don't really watch my political content, which is nice. I appreciate having friends outside the space, but you do have to try, and even if you fail, as long as your vote still counts and your vote means something, even if you live in kind of like a safe seat or whatever, I think you still got to go out and try. Because it's not just politicians who make the world a better or worse place, it's us individually as well. But I did find this tweet really funny. So it's Biden will not attend the Harris election watch party, and the caption is, "Oh yeah, one more thing, Kamala, make America great again." Sorry, it's just so funny. This clip is so funny. But yeah, let's discuss the European angle. Oh, motherfucker, this is in French. God damn it, Macron. But, he talks about kind of, I think the last time Trump came in and he won, I think a lot of countries, not just in Europe, but also around the world, realised that you can't rely on Donald Trump, you can't rely on America forever. And that's something Macron kind of is discussing here. He talks about the world's made up of herbivores and carnivores. If we decide to remain herbivores, the carnivores will win and will become a market for them. Should I do a French accent? Should I do my Arsene Wenger for this? Is that bad? No, I just shouldn't do it. Should I do a poll? No. I think at the least it would be good to choose to be omnivores. I don't want to be aggressive. I just want to know how to defend. I mean, to be fair though, isn't the Stegosaurus a herbivore? And that thing knows. All right, I've got permission. Let's go. Isn't the Stegosaurus though a herbivore? That thing can protect itself. All right, I'm gonna do my Wenger impression now. So it's gonna happen, guys. I just want us to know how to defend ourselves, and I don't want Europe to see left as great stage filled with herbivores to be devoured by carnivores. According to their agenda, we must accept this. This is why I'm a great believer in this format. And on this day after American election, I think we owe it to ourselves to be lucid, ambitious, and determined about our agenda. It is a question of common will. Okay, we've got another clip. There's you guys are going to be subjected to more of this, by the way. So basically, I think our role here and within the European Union is not to comment on the election of Donald Trump, on whether it is a good or bad thing. He has been elected by the American people, but he will defend the interests of Americans. That's legitimate. It's a good thing. The question is, are we prepared to defend the interests of Europeans? That's the question we have to answer. And I personally think that is our priority, and we shouldn't do this in a naive form of transatlanticism. That's a fucking hard word to say in French. Nor by our questioning our alliances. Nor is a narrow-minded spirit of nationalism and would prevent us from taking up the chat. He's fucking speaking a lot of words here. I'm not doing all this. Sorry guys. I can't do a full Macron for that. But I think he's kind of, the way he's phrased it is wrong. It might be just the way he's translated, but I kind of get his point. I think, especially Germany was caught lacking. And I think that's one of the things where, I think one of the things we need to remember is the world is a dangerous place. There are a lot of bad actors in this world, and I think a lot of European countries need to kind of ask themselves, if it kicks off, are you able to at least defend yourself? Forget other countries. Can you defend yourself in this situation? And if the answer is no, then you got to you got to be prepared. Let's also remember on the predator metaphor that most predators go on the. That's also true. I got better exam results in French than English. My aunt is a French teacher. That makes sense. I don't think his herbivore carnivore thing makes sense, but I think the argument really should be, can countries in Europe defend themselves from Russian aggression? And the one that has really done a lot in that regard is Poland. The rest, I don't think the fact that a lot of countries weren't even hitting the 2% NATO target it's just crazy. Like Germany were a consistent offender. I think they're only hitting 1.6, 1.8, and they had disastrous kind of campaigns when it came to armament. It's one of the reasons why they got rid of von der Leyen. She was a disaster for, I think, the German defense industry, or the German Ministry of Defense. However, whatever they would call it. She was a complete disaster for them. So Germany has a long way to go in that regard. I don't know how they're going to resolve that one. And the EU want to accelerate talks with the UK on a new security pact after the election of Donald Trump. It's a top priority for the EU in their relationship with the UK and gain momentum in talks with Starmer in Budapest. So, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, he's good. He's good to ask. So yeah, like the EU are looking at us for a defense pact. Maybe Phil was right, and we could use this to get better trade negotiations. But I doubt that's going to happen. Going to switch gears. We're going to discuss kind of immigration in terms of the the channel crossings and stuff. The fact they had Natalie Alfick at the border security thing is just a complete joke, given that she's a Tory. But okay.
But to do that, to finally grip this problem, we need to turn the page and move on from an unhealthy interest in gesture politics that has long defined this policy area and which has dragged the Tories as a serious party of government onto the rocks of their own delusion. Let me give you a few examples of what I mean by gesture politics. September 2020, the Sun newspaper reports that the government is exploring the procurement of Yamaha jet skis. The plan, allegedly, to patrol the English Channel. And
okay, let's skip this.
And today we launch our plan to do that.
Here we go.
A new approach to small boat crossings that will secure Britain's borders.
Why is he not moving?
Prevent the exploitation by tackling it upstream and smash the criminal smuggling gangs. And as the first step in this plan, a new manifesto commitment. We will set up a new command with new powers, new resources.
So all of this stuff he's talking about will not do the thing that he wants it to do.
And a new way of doing things. Border Security Command. Now, this is about leveraging the power and potential of dynamic government based on a counter-terrorism approach which we know works.
Where has it worked? In which country has this strategy worked in?
The fragmentation between policing, the border force, and our intelligence agencies. A collecting of the standards. So the border protection becomes an elite force, not a Cinderella service. An essential frontline defence that communities like this can depend on. To do all that, Border Security Command will bring together hundreds of specialist investigators, the best of the best, from the National Crime Agency, the Border Force, Immigration Enforcement, the Crown Prosecution Service, and yes, MI5. All working to a single mission, all freed from the cloying bureaucracy that so often prevents collaboration between different institutions.
So none of this stuff will help stop the channel crossings. That's the problem. None of this will help. What will help is safe routes of entry and also more foreign aid.
I've seen this firsthand at the Crown Prosecution Service many times. Good ambition is never enough.
Where there is a demand, they will always find supply. Same thing with drugs. Where there is demand for drugs, they will find supply for it.
On its own. But I've seen how with determination, with leadership, with single-minded focus, agencies can work together and deliver results. And not just within one country either. We can cooperate across borders. And that's not some kind of weakness. It's absolutely essential.
At least Donald Trump doesn't put you to sleep when he speaks. That's the only positive I'll say about him.
These criminals do not respect national borders. I mean, when I was at the Crown Prosecution Service, we had prosecutors posted in Pakistan working on counter-terrorism operations. In the Caribbean...
It would save the government a lot of money. You know, they're talking about investing in cameras and drones and whatnot. It would save us a fortune because a lot of the people that are crossing via the channel get their asylum claims heard.
In West Africa, disrupting the flow of drugs coming from South America on their way to Europe and ultimately to Britain. And these operations are not easy. Just think about conducting a raid. I've been through this so many times, seen it in real time. If you've pulled all the intelligence in one place, if you've spent weeks, months, years mapping out the patterns of criminal activity,
it's quite long.
Bringing in prosecutors to help assess the vital...
The German defense minister translates to Verteidigung. What the fuck? Verteidigung Minister. Nice. Okay, we'll skip this bit. Let's go to...
finds ways, without squeamishness or cruelty, to detain and remove people who have no right to be
if he confirms that I said it properly, then I'll take it.
Here is essential for security, fairness, and justice. It is a form of deterrence in itself. Because until we're seen around the world as a country that has a firm grip of the process at our border, until we're busting the Home Office backlog,
CPS was cruel to post office victims.
Arriving at decisions quickly without a fuss, so we can return people who have no right to be here, then yes, Britain will be seen as a soft touch. And it goes without saying, we do not have that effective deterrence at our borders at the moment. Our rules-based asylum system isn't working. Ask anyone in this part of the world. That much is obvious. So it's not hard to see why the Prime Minister might want a path to deterrent without the hard graft, the boring graft perhaps, of fixing the wider system. But I'm afraid, like so much of what he says these days,
Let's go here.
and so rebuilding
Joe, I'm going to put you guys to sleep. I'm going to have to listen to this at some point on 2x speed so I can figure out what's worth actually talking about. Here we have probably the best person in the country to discuss this. She's not live, unfortunately, but she was on the Sunday Roast discussing this a while back. Zoe Gardner, who is really good on this issue.
With us. The point I've always made on this, it shouldn't matter whether you're left wing, right wing, whatever your reason or whatever your assessment is as to why people cross the channel. Everybody, I think, agrees we don't want to see people in boats crossing the channel. It is incredibly dangerous, and we've seen some horrendous stories this year to highlight that. There are clear, demonstrable security issues as well. It's
£75 million boost for Border Security Command. That's a waste. You're wasting £75 million. You know, you're taking money from pensioners in order to do these gimmicks.
Expensive process when it gets to this end, and of course it means we have this sort of limbo policy of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people potentially hanging around stuck in hotels with no status whatsoever. It's a lose.
So where they should put that 75 million is straight into dealing with the backlog.
Lose, whatever way you look at it at the moment, and it's a complete mess. I think we all agree on that. But is smashing the gangs really the answer to solving the problem?
Well, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who isn't directly speaking for the government and therefore has to support this policy who would suggest that this is anything new, anything we haven't heard before, anything we haven't been doing for years, and anything that's really going to make a very big difference. I mean, I think...
No, I think it must be over like a few years.
You summed it up brilliantly just now. You can arrest one smuggler, but as long as there is a refugee with no solution and a closed border, then there will be another smuggler who comes along to fulfill that service. And we all know that. And as you said very clearly, nobody seems to benefit from this situation. Nobody seems to benefit, certainly not refugees who have no safe way to come to the UK and are dying and drowning in the Channel or risking their lives and having horrendous journeys to undertake at the hands of smugglers. And certainly the UK public don't benefit from this situation either, do we? We're very unhappy with seeing this chaos on our shores. So we have to ask ourselves, why has this continued for so long? Because this is the same policy that's been in place for decades, isn't it? Because somebody does benefit. And that is what we need to remember. This news today is a perfect illustration of it. Another £150 million to who? To the private surveillance firms that are selling us drones, fences, infrared cameras. They've been doing this for decades, and they are making an absolute killing.
So when you're looking out for the people who benefit from this policy, it's them.
Reported in the papers today that Graham King, who owns the company called Clear Springs that runs the asylum hotels, is on track to become a billionaire. There are people who do benefit from the status quo, and that is why it continues.
And whatever anybody thinks of, the last government, I think we can all probably agree they were a bit rubbish.
Complete booty cheeks they were.
But I'm sure Rishi, if you sat down and had a cup of coffee with Mr. Sunak, he also wanted to smash the gangs, and I'm sure Theresa May wanted to smash the gangs. I'm sure Boris even wanted to... there's nobody that would say, I don't want to stop people. Of course they do. We all want to do that. We've got several, particularly North European countries, particularly France and Belgium and the Netherlands, between us. We've got several Home Secretaries, we've got several military, several intelligence services, several police forces, several leaders, several border force. Nobody so far has the gang thing is already illegal, and the only person I can see from my research on this, Zoe, that's managed to talk to a people smuggler is a journalist from the BBC. I'm not aware that anybody else has caught one yet.
Yeah, well, some of them get caught from time to time, but you're absolutely right, because our conversation, you're absolutely right. This new government is doing the same thing as the last government. Our conversation is trapped between, should we try to stop make migrants disappear by stopping them being able to access smugglers and dinghies, or should we try to make them disappear by sending some of them away to a dictatorship in Africa? And in neither case will you ever make people disappear. And what is fundamentally lacking from our conversation about this is the angle that says, okay, this is a reality. It is a manageable number of people. We're talking about
it is true.
30,000 people who came to the UK in the last year on these boats.
It's not a ton of people given the population of the UK. It's very manageable, and it would not be that expensive, especially given the fact that a lot of them get their asylum claims accepted by the UK, especially in the context of us having a labour shortage as well. It just makes sense.
We could provide a safe way for 30,000 people to reach us. It would be a heck of a lot less expensive than this latest deal to provide another set of cameras on the border that won't make any difference whatsoever. And then what we should be doing with those people is looking at what our needs are as a country. So we have huge needs. We are an aging population. We're a shrinking population. We need people to come and work on our farms, to work in our care homes, to work in our health sector, to work in construction, to work in services and hospitality. We need people in all of those areas. How can we match the people who need to come here with the needs of our country for immigration? And how can we start to look at this whole question completely differently in a way that takes away the powers of the gangs, that takes away the huge contracts to surveillance companies that doesn't do us.
One of the ways other countries have dealt with, like drugs and things like that, is to illegalize drugs, is to legalize it. One of the ways we could easily deal with this is by looking at which country, the place in which people are coming from, and making safe routes of entry, also allowing British embassies to deal with asylum claims. That could be another thing we could do so that they could claim asylum much easier.
Any good, and that saves the lives of the people who are desperate to come here.
Well, we won't need anybody working on the farms because there won't be any of those soon either, Zoe, because I think they're being taken away by government taxation, but that's a whole other debate. But I take your point. Many people...
And that was a big straw man there.
Regardless of, which is what I said at the beginning, regardless of where somebody sits politically, many people argue, look, we don't want this amount of people coming into the country. I know you can construct arguments about necessity of labour and things like that. We currently live in a world where, moving around from country to country because you want to improve your life, and I don't blame anybody for giving it a go. But that's something 20 years ago maybe people would never have considered was possible if you lived in Sudan. The idea of getting over to the UK was a no-no.
It is important to say that...
He's capping because, again, other, I think Suella Braverman's parents were refugees, I think. Oh, no, they were migrants, but you've had, I think, Cabinet Tories whose parents were refugees, I think.
You talk about unprecedented numbers, that's taking in the whole of immigration. If you look at just asylum seekers, we have the same number of asylum seekers coming in every year now as we did in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's actually not unprecedented numbers of refugees who are seeking protection. And
so what he tried to do was conflate immigration with asylum seekers, and she debunked him.
Totally manageable number.
So it's the optics of how people come that has changed the if you like, the terms of the conversation.
So what we need to do is look at the people who really need to travel and put them at the forefront of our immigration policy. If you want to control numbers, people on small boats make up 5% of immigration. If you want to control numbers, they're not the right people to be focusing on, right? If you want to control numbers, there's all sorts of ways to do that. But these are people who do need solutions. They are small numbers of people. And the only realistic thing to do going forward is to look at how we can fit them into our existing immigration needs. They are not big numbers of people. They do need our help.
And the fact that numbers aren't changing makes it a lot more manageable as well. So she really is probably the best person in the country at talking about these issues. Here she's kind of discussing it with Ma.
It's more of the same that we heard from the last government, and frankly, that we've been hearing for decades. We've heard year on year an announcement here, a photo op with the Home Secretary from the UK and the French Interior Minister there sitting in front of a flag and signing a piece of paper and signing away more hundreds of millions of pounds to go on fences, to go on cameras, to go on drones. It's more of the same, and it doesn't work. But what it does do, and what we've seen really clearly, is it is making the journeys more dangerous. Because if you look at 2022, 48,000 people crossed the channel in a small boat, and only about 7 people that we know of drowned. This year, we're looking at about 30,000 people making the crossing. And as you said in the beginning, 57 people at least have lost their lives. And the groups that are helping refugees there on the ground in northern France say there is a direct line between the increase in enforcement, police patrols, drone patrols, infrared cameras that we're paying so much for, and people drowning and dying.
See, that makes sense because you're trying to avoid patrols, so you're going to take the more dangerous routes, and you put your life into more danger. So this actually makes a lot of sense what she's saying.
And yet the terrible truth is that if we had safe and legal routes, if we had no patrols of any kind at all, then so many people would come here that the British electorate would not accept that. It would be a politically impossible position. So the government is in an awful bind, isn't it?
Well, what you're saying there is essentially, to boil it down, we need to let these people drown because that is our deterrent. That's what the argument is.
Yeah, the other thing is no one talks about refugees coming from Hong Kong or from Ukraine. It's not that big a deal because they get here via plane. Like, that's the thing. Like, the optics around that conversation are very different. The optics of people crossing the channel, despite the fact that the ones crossing the channel, I think it's about 80 or 90% of them have their asylum claims accepted. So what he's talking is complete garbage.
But can I just point to a really successful thing that we did? We let an uncapped number of the 38 million Ukrainian citizens travel safely to the UK, uncapped, and immediately provide them with housing, welfare, integration and English language support services. And we were able to do that because we decided that that was the right thing to do. Now compare that, 200,000 people who came. 200,000 people is a lot. We were very generous, we helped people, and we did the right thing. Out of 38 million, an uncapped scheme, they're not all trying to come here. And the truth is that if we can help 200,000 Ukrainians, then we can also help 30,000 people who have crossed on a small boat to reach us safely. And it's just a decision that we have to make.
I guess the pushback would be that, climate change, wars across the Middle East, the Assad regime, the Taliban, there are so many reasons for people to try to get out of countries around the world that, you talk about the Ukrainian scheme, but we are potentially talking about many, many more people. And once you have a completely safe, completely legal route here, the numbers could be much, much higher than we're seeing at the moment.
It has to be done in cooperation with the rest of Europe because Europe is a country that is growing old. Without immigration,
it's a continent. If I was going to be pedantic, it's a continent. But
we are actually shrinking. We will not be able to pay for the pensions of my generation when I get older because we have not been having enough children to replace our working age population. Our welfare state and our way of life is under serious threat from the fact that our demographic need is so great for immigration. And as a continent of Europe, we are a very big continent and we are very capable of absorbing the people who desperately need to come to seek safety on our shores.
So would you like to see some kind of pan-European agreement about how many people came to which part of Europe, which countries? Of course, we're not part of the EU, so it would have to be a pan-agreement between the EU and the UK that would have quotas, as it were, of the number of people allowed in each year.
This is what should have happened from the start. This is, when the original kind of Mediterranean crisis happened, this should have happened from the start, really. Like, instead of pushing it all onto the border regions of kind of Greece and Italy, it should have happened that each country has to take an allocated amount of people, or certain countries could essentially receive funding in order to help them out, house more people. That's what should have happened. It's only when the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened where a lot of countries kind of threw open doors and said, look, if you want to seek refuge in our country, we'll help you. But even then, Poland still bore the brunt of the kind of Ukrainian refugee crisis because that's where refugees typically go. It's the it's the countries nearby.
Have been really contentious across the EU, and I think that it will be incredibly difficult to move a continent that, just like us and just like the United States, is really locked in at the moment to this race to the bottom on rhetoric and this race to the bottom on policy, where each country at the current time says, not here, you can go to my neighbour, I don't care. You can stay in the country before. Yeah, France says to Italy. Italy says to Tunisia. We say they should stay in France or they should go to Ireland. We don't care either way, as long as you're not here. That cycle is self-perpetuating, and every single country does it, and it leaves people with no solution. So we have to be the ones to break that cycle. It will take a lot of work, but the UK on its own is the 6th richest country in the world, is in desperate need of immigration, and could very easily have offered those 30,000 people who risked their lives in the Channel, plus those 57 who died, a safe way to reach us, and we could have benefited from having them here.
And do you really think that a political party which said we are going to open the gates, we're going to be much more generous, would...
That's a straw man. Again, no one is saying that. What we're saying is offering people safe routes of entry, safe ways or of getting here to claim asylum. That's what people are saying. You're not talking about opening doors or anything like that. A fucking straw man again.
Get elected in this country.
I think that what won't work is what Keir Starmer's doing now. What doesn't work is when we don't have a single party that is offering an alternative. Nigel Farage tweeted today that Keir Starmer's been stealing his language, and he's absolutely right. And the only person who will benefit politically from Labour following what the Tories did, and the exact same mistake of demonising migrants and pouring money into failed systems that don't deter people but do kill people, the only person who will politically benefit from that is Nigel Farage. So some political party has to be brave enough to stand up and say, we're going to break with this. It hasn't been working. We've been doing the same thing for decades. It's the definition of insanity, and it's killing people. We're going to change. We're going to restructure our immigration system so that it reflects reality, which is that there are some people who desperately need to come here. And we will make that safe. We will regulate it so that we know that it's happening in an orderly fashion. And we will do our best to make sure that the benefits of that are shared throughout our society.
She really is one of the best at the country at talking about asylum seekers. Genuinely, just levels above everyone else at the moment. Mar started reading off names of people who died in the Channel. I said 57 people could have been given a safe way to travel. He said no, we couldn't handle it. Again, it's just a complete joke, to be honest. I don't want to discuss Germany. Nah, we'll leave Germany. There's no point. A couple other topics to discuss. Something on the OBR. I've been meaning to cover this, which is let's.
We had built up a way of working with the Treasury, and we're going to get into the weeds, unfortunately, a bit on how forecasts are put together, but in particular on departmental expenditure limits, which is the 40% of public spending which is allocated out to departments, where. Which had worked well up until, I would say, this past year, where within periods covered by spending of use, which deals were set by departments, there was a system of expenditure control in place, which where we had a kind of high trust relationship with the Treasury, that those things were being well managed and managed within the total. That system very clearly broke down, and when the information that came to light was presented to Parliament in July, we immediately wrote to the committee to say we were going to look into this, because we were not aware of the pressures that had been highlighted. We did our own investigation, overseen by our own non-executive directors, and asked the Treasury the specific question, what were you aware about in terms of departmental pressures? At the time, we were putting together the March budget, which was earlier in time than the July statement, about spending about pressures on departmental spending. And the short answer was that there were about £9.5 billion worth of net pressure on departments' budgets, which they did not disclose to us as part of our usual budget preparation process around DEL, which under the law and under the Act they should have done.
So you got Jeremy Hunt potentially breaking the law, at least the Treasury doing that, because they should have disclosed to the OBR what was going on.
And we have written to the committee with the findings of that review, and we have also, together with the Treasury, I think, put in place a better process, and one which I think gives us greater confidence, and I hope will give this committee greater confidence that in future that kind of failure will not happen again, and that the scrutiny of and it will involve greater scrutiny on our part of departmental expenditure limits and the preparation of departments' budgets.
It's one thing Labour's going to struggle with now. I think the OBR are going to be a lot more all over them. The other issue is that with the OBR, somehow they made like a £18 billion mistake in their planning or something like that when it came to Reeves's budget, which is kind of nuts.
To make sure that those kind of pressures do get disclosed to us, and if they are disclosed to us, we have a conversation about how they're going to be managed, how they're going to be offset.
The irony is that the black hole is about 9.5 billion. So for Labour Party to run on the 22.5 that you're saying is 22.5 is a complete joke. But this is an article from the Guardian discussing it. Saying that the Treasury officials may have broken the law. The head of the OBR saying because you don't know, you don't know. But he said the disclosure would have materially changed its forecast, predicting the impact on the economy of Jeremy Hunt's pre-election budget. The other thing is that people make decisions on investment based on the budgets and the forecasts as well. So essentially, potentially, the Treasury and Jeremy Hunt lied to a lot of people here. I think this could potentially damage a lot of confidence in the UK. So, Treasury Committee Chair Meg Hillier says it would need to investigate the legal situation to establish any laws are broken. Asked if Downing Street believed that officials were to blame, Starmer's officials indicated that Tory ministers should take responsibility, which is what I agree with. Hughes, who was responding to questions about Labour's first budget in 14 years, also said its increase in employees' national insurance would lead to lower wages in real terms. So, essentially, a tax on working people, despite Labour's denials of that. And kind of speaking about the Tories, let's have a listen. I think it's a good enough pivot from talking about Jeremy Hunt, the previous Chancellor, and talking about the current Shadow Cabinet. So here we've got this geezer here who's been he's going to be Shadow Home Secretary.
Out
That's
onto
a
the
lie.
street and gave an
That
impromptu
is a
press
lie.
conference.
That is a lie.
Videotape.
And then we went back to the talks.
Yeah,
You're lying, and you're a liar.
Let's just
TV direct lie.
So Chris Phillips, liar. We've got this interview with Claire Coutinho.
So Keir Starmer doesn't eat it, and Ed Miliband is clearly scarred by his encounter with a bacon sandwich.
Talk about a meat tax.
Did you write? You didn't write that, did you?
I did actually write that. I think, it's good to have a light moment in your speech as well. But the point is actually...
They're not proposing a meat tax.
The point is actually very serious.
So the audio here is awful. So hopefully you guys are all right.
Things that Labour are proposing are incredibly hard for working families. So whether you have things like
meat tax, that's what you're saying here.
Well, so the point is, they are proposing things which are pushing families too hard. So you've got things like the ULEZ tax expansion, which does cost families £12.50 a day.
It's not meat tax, though, is it?
But that is very difficult. And they've got things like proposing that you would decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030 again, which would result in very difficult choices for
Also not
families.
meat tax.
And their plans to push up inflation by borrowing £28 billion. So the point that I was making is quite serious. Yes, that was a light-hearted moment in the speech, but the point is actually...
It was a lie.
Deadly serious, that if you push people too far in this country, you will lose the cause of climate change, something that I'm passionate about because I think it's really important that we get there.
But genuinely, there isn't a meat tax.
Well, actually, if you try and push too hard...
Yeah, this is a Shadow Net Zero Secretary. So we're doing well here. And so you got Shadow Justice, who wanted to quit the ECHR. That's generic. You've got Shadow Chancellor, who wants to take away maternity rights. That's Mel Stride, I think that was. Also Kemi Badenoch, who may want to take away maternity rights. A Shadow Foreign Secretary, who was sacked for holding secret meetings with Foreign Secretary Priti Patel. Oh, damn it, copyrighted music. Ooh, that was close. So Priti Patel has been made Foreign Secretary by Kemi Badenoch, the same Priti Patel who's forced to resign as Home Secretary for engaging in under-the-radar meetings with a foreign state seeking to divert British taxpayer money to the Israeli army, apparently. Wanted double down news. I didn't know that last bit. But, yeah, nah. That's her top picks. Crazy business. Oh, yeah, actually, wait, we've got one more. We've got Laura Trott as well.
What is puzzling me is how you can be even talking about tax cuts when a central pledge is getting debt down and debt is going up.
So the central pledge is one of our fiscal rules, which is that debt needs
This was beautiful. I remember this. Yeah. This was fun.
Be falling over the 5-year fiscal forecast as a percentage of GDP, which it is.
No, it's higher in 5 years than now.
Not as a percentage of GDP.
Yeah, no, it's higher. It's going up. It's lower in the 5th year relative to the 4th year. So it goes down at the end of the projection. But in 5 years, I think it's higher at the end of the project. Yeah, 23.4, 89% of GDP. 28.9, it's 93% of GDP. Debt goes up. It falls at the end of 5 years a little bit. But that doesn't mean debt is coming down. That means debt is going up. It's higher. It's higher in 5 years than now.
It's falling as a percentage of GDP.
No, it's higher as a percentage of GDP.
I'm not sure. I think.
Don't worry about it, Kieran.
This is really basic. I'm looking at the latest OBR table. Public sector net debt ex Bank of England, 28.9, 92.8%, 23.4, 89%. So it's up in 5 years. Now, I'm amazed that you don't know that debt is rising, but you're the one who's planning.
Percentage of GDP, because
I'm looking at the percentage of GDP.
This is. I think I need to have the figures. I've got different figures, so I think we just need to.
Okay, let's just suppose if debt is higher on the OBR forecast in 5 years than now, you couldn't possibly be cutting taxes while your pledge is that debt should be falling.
The point is that we have our fiscal rules, and within those we have an amount of headroom. So we will only do things that are fiscally responsible and sit within our fiscal rules.
It's a really, really big point, this, isn't it? And one of us has obviously got it wrong. I think I'm looking at the right table, and I think I'm looking at the right line. And it's possible that the figures will all change. But at the moment, it looks to me like debt is higher in 5 years than it is now. And you're still talking about tax cuts. And I'm just wondering how you do that if you're pledging debt.
Or how you're going to afford it, yeah.
Falling is one of your key 5 pledges.
Percentage of GDP over the 5-year forecast. Yes,
and I'm looking
we
at
would
the
always
percentage of GDP line. That's the only relevant one.
So I think that we've always said that we will only do things within our fiscal rules and where it is affordable for us to.
The tax cut wasn't affordable. That's the problem. There was no way for you to afford it. Yeah, she's the Shadow Education Secretary, and she can't read a table.
Do so. So yes, we want to cut taxes. We believe that drives growth, but we will only do it if it sits within our fiscal rules.
And it wasn't within your fiscal rules because debt was going up as a percentage of GDP.
Laura Trott, interesting conversation. We should probably both go and look at the books, make sure we haven't made a mistake. But obviously, really interesting point about whether debt is going up or going down on your watch. Laura Trott, Chief.
It was going up.
Secretary to the Treasury. Thank you so much.
Oof. That was painful. I remember covering this one. So, again, her top team are all on Fraud Watch. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, and let's not forget she belittled the COVID stuff as well. You know, she said Partygate was overblown. I don't know if there's a clip for that. Unfortunately, there's not, but it's more of the same, and it's crazy business. Absolutely crazy business. Her team are full of frauds. I guess, you know, you don't have a ton of options in the Tory party, but yeah, madness. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. We don't do research. True, we don't. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. It's a bit of a long one today. 2 hour, an hour and a half. Actually, you know what? It's not gone that long. It just feels quite long. Yeah, I can't do maths either. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. And yeah, I'll try and should be streaming next Saturday. I don't really have. Yeah, it should be on next Saturday as well. And so yeah, I'll catch you guys next Saturday. Bye bye.